time and appreciate it.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sharin Stories. I am your host, Peaks, with my two beautiful co-hosts, Sarah States and the real St. Paul. This will not be a therapy session. You will not find any mental health professionals here, nor are we a substitute for said people. We are just regular people sharing and hopefully normalizing our stories with mental health. We are lucky enough today to have someone on the podcast who has made their mental health a part of their life and career. A high-class Division I athlete who pushes himself daily to be the best that he can be, both physically and mentally. The creator and host of The Athletic Mindset, a unique place to finally understand what goes through the heads of some of the most elite athletes in the world. So if you're like me and ever wonder just what drives these individuals or what makes them tick, go ahead and turn this off now and go right over to The Athletic Mindset. However, we are lucky enough to have him over on our podcast today to tell us a little about his journey and also learn about the insight he has gained from the countless other stories that he's heard. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Cory Camp to the podcast. Thanks for being on, Cory.
Thank you guys for having me. And that intro humbles me. I think what you guys are onto here is really what attracted me to even reach out to you all. You are on the cusp of some greatness with this stuff. So I appreciate just being able to be invited on and given the opportunity to share my story as a part of something bigger. So thank you all.
We definitely greatly appreciate that. And thank you for the kind words. I mean, I had a chance to listen to a couple of your episodes as well, and it's beyond interesting. And each one kind of brings a new aspect to exactly what you look at when you're watching these people play the highest level of sports. It's unbelievable. And I do believe that anybody who's watching this would also be interested in something along those lines. But without further ado, we want to hear about you, my man.
Yeah, I'm happy to come on here and share my story, a little bit of background. I am now a personal performance coach. So what that means is I help people really just start to look at a way to optimize their life. I come at it from a movement perspective, obviously the background in athletics and sports, but I'm a firm believer that we're all athletes deep down. You don't have to compete at that high level, that stage. We have a body, so we can move it. And to me, being an athlete just means having some intention behind that movement. And what I've found in my time outside of sports is really that movement extends way beyond just the physical. I started the Athletic Mindset podcast as a way to start learning these stories from these elite athletes and figuring out the way they think. And I started to realize the way they think can be applied to our everyday life. It doesn't matter who we are. We can take those same intangibles and start putting them into our life. So that's really what I do now. My background is, as a swimmer. I grew up outside of Maryland or outside of DC in the Maryland area, swimming my whole life. My dad was a collegiate swimmer. It seemed like the natural path for me to go as well. So, but I wasn't always the best swimmer, actually. It wasn't until high school or so that I started to really get some confidence and get some affirmation of like all this hard work and stuff that I was putting in was going to pay off. I'd say it was really like sophomore, junior year of high school was when this realization that not only could I swim at that next level, but I could be something noteworthy at that next level, going into collegiate athletics. Ended up getting a Division I scholarship at the University of Delaware. So I was able to pursue swimming at that next level and everything that it brought me. It was a great experience. And I think where we're going with this story today is for a long part of my career, I let the swimming be what defined me, these athletic achievements. And I was okay with that in the moment, right? Like I'm going through my college career and it's a great time. I'm doing best times, swimming faster than I ever swam before, getting invited to, swim at the winter national meets where now all of a sudden I find myself competing against these guys that I looked up to as a kid, and they competed in the Olympics and all this. And here they are right next to me, and we're going head to head for the first time. It's really cool experiences. I wouldn't trade that for anything. But the longer you do some certain things, no matter what it is, whether it's sport, a job, when it comes to an end, that's where stuff gets hard, right? We're forced to find that next chapter and reinvent ourselves and redefine ourselves. And some people go through that way easier than others. Personally, when I got to my senior year, it was like, okay, now what? Because for the longest time, I had an avenue where I knew what success looked like. Swimming is great, right? It's time-based sport. So I got constant affirmations of, did I improve or did I not improve? My time reflected that. Now, all of a sudden in the real world, so to speak, I'm like, I don't have that constant feedback of, well, did I get better today? I don't know. I'm figuring that out. And the whole plan was to go into physical therapy school when I graduated. I was so wrapped up in the swimming success that my school success, my academic success, wasn't at the level that it needed to be to invite me into that next chapter of grad school. So I had this crisis moment as I started to come to that realization. And really that was when I discovered the power of going to see a therapist. And it wasn't until that senior year that I realized that we had these resources available to us on the college campus that I neglected for so long. And then I thought, oh, that's only for yeah, you know who those are for. Like, that's not for me.
Right.
And all of a sudden I was like, oh, wait, no, that could be really helpful for me. And so, kind of reluctantly, I went to sign up and secure a time slot, I guess. And in doing so, I had no idea what to expect. But I just remember going into this office and speaking with this professional, this therapist, and I was like, yeah, I have no idea what's next. I really don't. And through talking with her, I found a lot of why it was so difficult for me was I have this innate need to put out things that are perfect. And I want to hold on to being looked up to and looked to in a way of inspiration and a leader. And all that stuff is great, right? But it comes with a lot of pressure. And I wasn't equipped at that time to deal with that pressure in a way that was constructive and made sense to me. So going to what I thought was just going to be one therapy session, I had no idea what I was opening up there. I didn't realize it was like not a one and done thing. It was okay, this is a forever evolving thing, and being okay with that. That was when that shifted for me, was that senior year. Being okay with not being okay and really stepping into that freedom that it's okay to admit that. And yeah, that's opened up so many doors for me, since once I realized that you don't have that need to be perfect all the time, I started to show up better in all of the other areas of my life that I kind of neglected for so long because swimming was the focus.
Right. Did you ever feel like you were doing swimming for your dad when you were growing up?
It's funny. I've been asked that before, and not really. It was always for me. But what I found so fascinating about it was an opportunity, an avenue for my dad and I to build a stronger relationship. And that's what I liked about it too, I started morning swim practices in 6th grade. That begins at 4:45 a.m.
Wow.
Can you imagine being in 6th grade, being like, okay, we need you to show up at the practice, the pool deck at this time.
I can barely remember waking up for school at 8.
I was probably asking my mom to cut off the crust of my peanut butter and jelly sandwiches still. So
yeah, it was It was crazy, to be honest, looking back on it and hearing like other people's reaction that weren't in that world. It's like, okay, yeah, what I was doing wasn't normal. What made it even funnier actually was my dad is a big health advocate and fitness enthusiast in his own right. This was right around the time where he's going through this like weight loss journey. So he needs to get his workout in too, right? Well, what did that mean? That meant we got to the pool actually at like 5 after 4. Like we were there before the coaches. Helped that he was also a coach at the same facility, so he could unlock the place. And he would swim his laps in the pool before my group hit the water. And in order to do that, he needed to be in the water about 30 to 40 minutes prior to my practice start time. And it sounds crazy, but I think really those moments instilled so many of my values now of like, it doesn't matter what you need to get done, just you schedule it and you get it done when you need it to get done. It doesn't matter the hour of the day.
Right.
I think you and Paul share that one in common 100%. But that is not something that is easily learned. That is not something that comes natural in the slightest. So it is really interesting to see how you get to that point. So continuing, I mean, I have a ton of questions on your story, but I'm sure there's more that you have that you can kind of enlighten us with a little briefer. So I'm going to let you go for a little bit longer. If that's not the case, I can start rifling these questions off. Yeah. But I know you have stories from other people too, which I thought maybe you'd bring some of those in and kind of have some ideas on exactly how these people get to this management level of my life's changing. It's not over.
Yeah.
You know?
No, and I think that's huge. I've been fortunate enough on my own podcast platforms to have had a variety of athletes on there, different backgrounds, different sports, different levels that they have achieved, whether it's professional, just the collegiate level, doesn't really matter. A constant that I'm seeing though is the ones that don't struggle with that transition are the ones that have accepted that it's not ending. It's, this book isn't over. It's just a simple turning of the page. And now we're in a new chapter. And that's what I've learned these past really 3.5 years since swimming stopped for me is how can I take these themes throughout my own story that served me to be, the swimmer that I was and take them into being the person that I want to be now. And how do they relate? What's the vision that I see for my life? And how can I take my old experiences in a way that serve me rather than in a way that just makes me feel like I'm totally lost. I have no idea what's going on and not taking action. So that's been really the big mindset shift for me personally. And that has come through at this point, 100 plus conversations with other athletes, figuring out what is next. You had a former guest of mine, Big Joe, I think on your program. And he was a huge advocate for me, man. I found his podcast that he does like I think early or mid like 2017 I want to say, and that was a big point for me was okay, cool, I'm not alone. Like I'm not the only person that's going through the struggle of finding identity post sports, post athletics. So that was a huge
I mean, finding your identity after any craft that is spent up the first 25 years of your life or the first 22 years of your life. Mm-hmm. Like I wonder how hard is it to distance ourselves from our craft? I'm not someone who's specifically great at anything. So like I consider myself all right at these things, but I don't have anything, one specific thing that I am working at my whole life. How hard is it to distance ourselves? How difficult is it to distance ourselves from your craft? How difficult was it for you on a daily basis while you were still in your craft? How difficult was it versus now?
First off, you're selling yourself short there, man.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I still think I'm great at stuff. I'm no Division I athlete. I'm not, the top of any sort of chart up here, but I do think I'm great at stuff.
Yeah. I think when you take a step back and you can look at it, you'll find there's some things in there that you can throw into that category. But how do you distance it? I think in the moment, it's really tough. It's really tough. And why that transition's hard, among other reasons, is when it ends, it's finally a point in our life that you have to pause. Why do you think people struggled with COVID shutting down everything? It forced us all to pause and take a inventory inward of like, where am I? And what am I good at? And for some of us, we don't like what we see when we hit pause. We just want to live our life like so fast that we just put the blinders on and we like don't bring acknowledgement to, okay, yeah, this part of my life is on fire, but like I'm going to keep moving as an athlete and this part's really good. So I'm not going to bring attention there. So hitting pause is a huge, I guess, suggestion to invite people to start doing more of. And you take that internal inventory and realize maybe, yeah, like this, I said, this part of my life is on fire, but if we can like get that in control, it's actually going to help us out in this area as well.
Yeah. Like, do you have things you do now that kind of slow down your life and allow you to take that time? I mean, I'm sure you're still working a lot.
Yeah, it's easier said than done, but creating boundaries, right, around my own schedule. The beauty of in the past 2 months, I actually left my full-time like job and have started pursuing this entrepreneurial lifestyle full time. And it's really easy for the work in the life to just blend. And sometimes I'm not too great at separating the two. But I find my best weeks are when I am firm in those boundaries, whether it's no phone before a certain hour of the day or, logging off and not having social media past a certain amount of, certain time of day, or even full days not with social media. It's tough though, as try to build a business through social media. You want to be plugged in all the time and always connecting with people. And that's my business now, is connecting with people. So it's hard to turn that off. But when you turn that off and pause, set boundaries around it, you're able to connect then on such a more present level. You know what I mean? And I think that's really the secret, is just being present in that connection. And you're able to have a deeper connection that way.
I think finding a balance between social media and life is extremely important. It's too easy to wake up every morning and scroll for 45 minutes, and it's too easy to sit in your bed with all the lights off and you're staring at a screen for the last 45 minutes of the day. These things are just too easy for us nowadays. So I think unplugging for a little bit here and there would be fantastic. I want to go back into this therapy you spoke about, because you said, the whole point of the show is really exactly what you said. You were reluctant to go into therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And for so many of us, I was reluctant to go into therapy. And one day, you just kind of hit the switch and say, I'm going to try it, whatever. What's the worst that happens? I don't have to tell anybody after this day. I want to know a little bit about your experience with therapy, because I know everybody's is different. Some people one time and they're done. I want to just know a little bit more in depth about how that therapist helped you.
Yeah. And I think that reluctance comes from that stigma that is around that word therapy. People hear that and they think something has to be wrong with you for you to even go there. And what I realized in going there was nothing has to be wrong. It's just an opportunity to get like an unbiased perspective on what is going on in your life. And it's just like, it's so much better because it's not a friend that has emotional stake in probably what you're dealing with. It's not your parents who are also emotionally invested in you. It's literally just this third party person that can just listen to your story and what's going on in your life. And what I found so helpful there is I thought it was going to be a one and done. I thought it was going to be like a 1 hour session, wash my hands and like get on with my life. It really helped that it was a free resource at University of Delaware, for sure. And that was inviting, obviously being a college student. And when I started going, we started talking through this. It was like, why do you feel this need to be perfect all the time? And I was like, well, because I've always had this plan, and like for as long as I can remember, like the plan was to go to Division I school, and I wanted to study exercise science, and I wanted to swim, and of course I was going to be like one of the best swimmers on the team. That just made sense. Like that's the story, that's the vision that I had for myself. And all of a sudden now I'm dealing with this vision that I had for myself. My future, what being a physical therapist, wasn't matching my reality, and that's why it was so tough. So she helped me navigate, like, okay, right now, and this is one of the huge things I help other people with now, is redefining what success means to you. I was realizing that success to me at the time was going into a top person or physical therapy grad school program, and anything short of that wasn't successful. And really, she helped me open my eyes to a perspective shift of, what if you're just not meant to go to physical therapy school? What if you're meant to go do something else? And I was like, well, that doesn't feel good. Like, you're crushing my dreams right now.
Yeah, you're supposed to be uplifting me, right?
Yeah. But really what I found was that invited me to all these other experiences, and it opened my eyes to, okay, grad school's not the only answer. And it's hard when the joke is around my major as an exercise science major. The joke is like, that's just a cool piece of paper. That's a stepping stone to a graduate program of some sort. It doesn't really set you up for anything successful post-grad right away. So when I'm being fed that story on one side, it's really hard to accept this therapist's advice of being like, what if there's open possibilities for you by not pursuing grad school? But I'm so glad I listened to her. You know, I went through a sales job, my first job out of school. I thought that was it. No, try again. It wasn't it.
Yeah.
But that was my new definition of success was like, well, if I can't do grad school, I want to make a lot of money. So like sales is obviously the fast track to making a lot of money, right? And then I realized it wasn't an avenue of making money that I was genuinely proud of and aligned with who I am as a person. It's a very viable source of income for so many people out there, but it just wasn't a fit for me. But I realized I had to take that experience and internalize it and find the stories there that serve me to help me get into coaching. And then I shifted into, being a swim coach for really coming back into being a swim coach. I was a coach for 5 years, took a year break to do the sales job, and then I came back to it because there's these old stories of you can't make a living being a swim coach. Well, I took the jump and did it and proved that I could make a living being a swim coach. And now it's just, I shifted again, walking away from the swim coaching to kind of hopefully make an impact on a bigger level. But all of that really stemmed from this series of therapy sessions, talking with her through really everything and kind of rewiring my brain in the way I looked at what is success, what is the timeline for success. And the biggest takeaway for me really is I wasn't, like I mentioned way earlier, I wasn't a great swimmer until, 10 years into being a swimmer.
Until 4 a.m. sessions became 3 a.m. sessions. And
luckily they never got earlier, but yeah, exactly. Right. So here I was like rushing what I thought was success, and I wasn't enjoying the current moment. And really that's what this past year in COVID has presented me, was an opportunity to just start enjoying the moment way more. And the timeline, the success will take care of itself down the road. But that doesn't mean I'm not successful right now.
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty good. So I'm really excited actually to get into kind of your current career.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'm not gonna, but right before I do that, I just want to pick up on one thing we said, and I kind of want to ask this for everybody. When you were talking about how you went from this situation where you had times you had things that you knew were getting you better or worse, you had something to track you your whole way. is there things in life we do have that allow us to track how we're doing? Do any of you think so, or is it kind of just?
So you mean like affirmation?
Yeah. Is there certain things that in life can give you affirmation other than feeling happy on a certain day or not on a certain day?
Well, I feel like I can relate to what Cory's saying just because in my career, it's very like affirmatively yes or like no. So like as an actor, you're told yes or no. And like, that's how you gauge your success. You're like, oh, got this. Yes, that means I'm good. Or like, oh no, like I suck. So like dealing with that is really, it can be take you to the extreme highs and then extreme lows. Something that you deal with on a daily basis. So like, I think that getting away from that sort of mindset of seeking that sort of like affirmation all the time at work or at home or like even through social media or whatever is really difficult, but something that definitely greatly improved my mental health, like to take a step back from that and just to realize that like, you don't need that sort of constant validation or like affirmation to feel successful or good. But yeah, I think like there are certain things like that can affirm, you as a person daily. I mean, like if you're a good person, you're bound to feel affirmation from the relationships that you're in, various things like that. But ultimately, I think like seeking that sort of validation can be really tough to balance because you're bound to feel it in the opposite direction as well.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I agree. It's like that's why I kind of stepped away from my former career as like a blogger, is because there's so much validation involved. Like every time we would like write an article, like we would just have there's so much just pressure from like getting some positive feedback from other people, and that I really want to step away from that because I was just so consumed with that, and I just didn't feel like successful. Like I wasn't, because like I define success as like being fulfilled in yourself, but I wasn't fulfilled. I was like, yeah, like my company was successful, but like I wasn't happy. Like I was meeting all these people and all this and that, but I wasn't like fulfilled. I wasn't fulfilled in my own self. Like I was just going through the day by day, and I was just like, I don't want this. Like, and it took me a while to realize that, like, and
Yeah.
it's I'm just stepping back and just realizing that, like what Sarah said, like, you don't need that positive feedback all the time. You just like sometimes all you need is self-love within yourself. Like, you don't need that other external validation. You just need to sometimes realize that, like you're enough for yourself. Like,
So how do you measure that?
I feel like seeking that out too can really take away from what you're doing. Like you may love to swim and like that's your passion, and like performing is my passion. And Paul, like I feel like music and like that scene was like really a passion for you, and writing about it and sharing it with people. And like once it turns into this thing where the pressure is on and you do have that mindset of like, if I get this best time, that means like I'm good. And like, that means I'm the best. Or like, if I go to this audition and they say yes, or I move on to the next round, that means I'm good. Like it really takes away from like your fulfillment level or your joy or like what you're doing and living in the moment and really like being passionate about something. So I think that also is like another aspect where it becomes really difficult to balance.
Yeah, it's a tough balance for sure. Especially, you look at the social media game and the feedback, whether blogging or acting or what I received in going a best time. Why did we like that? It's because our brain received some dopamine as soon as we got it, right? So if I touched the wall and I saw best time, I was psyched.
Yeah.
If I posted a thing on Instagram and it gets whatever views and likes, I'm psyched because it's well received. If you post a blog and it's well received, you feel it because of that dopamine. I heard recently the a quote that really resonates with me is the fastest way to success is just for you to be you and just trust that. And it's so much easier said than done, right? But
Yeah.
that's really what we're all trying to do is how can we authentically and genuinely be ourselves in a way that brings us that fulfillment and detaches from the outcome that we are seeking. And if we can detach from that outcome, whether it's instant feedback of likes, new clients, acting gigs, then we can be fulfilled through our output and just being, and just a whole new, a more present sense, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the end, what we just did is kind of look at the fact that like whether or not whatever you do want to measure, whatever level of fulfillment you are measuring, make sure it's not the only thing that keeps you going, right? Like don't sit there and then the next time you get the like small likes or views, don't all of a sudden shut down. Just because you were looking for that fulfillment, you don't need it everywhere you're going. So it's interesting, but it is tough to actually just sit there and self-measure yourself and say, I'm doing better today because of this, this, and this in my own life, rather than saying because of these people said this or this happened around me.
I haven't read it, but there's a book called like I think it's like 1% better or something like that. The concept of like being 1% better every day, like for yourself, and like success in that way, which seems like so little. I mean, like 1% better. Does that mean like I eat my salad for lunch instead of like my leftover pizza? Like, I guess, I don't know. Or like, does that mean like I actually follow through on something that I have as on my to-do list, like one thing? I mean, like conceptually 1% is like not that hard, but if it was easy, there wouldn't be books on it. Like it's, I guess measuring like that little bit can be, I don't know.
It's funny. It's funny because you said that and I immediately go, that's impossible. Because let's think about it. If you get 1% better each day, let's say I'm eating healthier tomorrow, and then the following day, like I think these are big jumps. Eating healthier probably would be more like 40% better than 1%. Like, so I guess the way you have to look at it is like each individual thing. Like when you're doing 1% from this day forward, I am going to try and eat healthier. That's 1% of that day, and it also continues through the rest of the day, I guess, overall. But sooner or later, you're just going to become too good.
And you're going to be like, yeah.
You're like, what's my 1% today? I have to go save a group of kids from a burning building. That's my only option.
There's no limit to like how much better you can be. So it's just like, and you're going to like human nature. It's not like you're going from like being 1% great to like Goo Plox, if that's even a number, like great, like
it's a number. All right, so we're pulling away.
I'm going to argue that that's the athletic mindset right there, though, is, you tell LeBron James, dude, just like stop getting 1% better. You just won your 4th title. Like you're good.
Yeah.
He's going to look at you like you have 7 heads and you're crazy. Like he's a firm believer that he can always get better. And that's kind of, I think, coming from the athletic background, you can see that possibility. What makes it cool is like it goes beyond athletics. It can be one day you're getting 1% better in your diet and it's just making a simple swap, or it can be, okay, maybe I just got to bed 5 minutes earlier than I did the night before. And when you look at it that way, I think there truly are limitless possibilities for you to improve and invite that 1% better daily.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's perfect segue to bring us back to you, because we just totally went off the rail a little bit. And I want to get back into that athletic mindset and your career really overall. And I just want to open it up with a general question. So how in sync do you think our physical health is with our mental health? As someone who's dealt with both.
We froze. Given that question.
Did everybody lost me?
I didn't. But go for it again.
How in sync do you think our mental health is with our physical health?
I think they should be one and the same. Because a great documentary on HBO, The Weight of Gold, if you guys haven't checked that out, it's really interesting insight on the mental health behind these gold medal winning Olympians. And they kind of shed a light on, here are these people that, from the public's view, are in peak physical shape. They're the best in the world at what they do. But mentally, they're nowhere near a good space holistically. They're in a great mindset space for competition, and when it comes to the rest of their life, there's areas for improvement, and they're actually in a dark space. So I think they're not mutually exclusive of one another, but they should be. They should be talked about in the same breath of, how can for me, like, I have to get my movement in daily for my mind to then be in a good space for whatever else I'm tackling for that day, so to speak. I don't think all athletes make that connection, and that all people make that connection.
So for you then, what are some ways you think as a coach or a teacher, even teachers in the classroom, we're not even talking about all athletes now, how can you incorporate this simultaneous, mental health and physical health idea into your teachings?
Yeah, I like this question. I think there's a couple ways. One is providing time for just like journaling prompts is huge. Like I said earlier, like COVID was very difficult for a lot of people because it made us pause. But if you're able to provide a time for them to pause, and then a structured journal prompt that allows them to maybe get to these underlying things that aren't normally being asked to be, brought to the forefront, that's one way. The other thing what's really difficult, I think, around mental health things is no one likes to admit it, right? We don't like to show our cards that we are struggling in a certain area of our life. We want to keep that to ourselves, and at the very most, maybe share that with like one close person. So if you're in that teaching or coaching space, just know that it's going to take some time for people to open up to you. It's not going to be one journal prompt and they spill their whole life story for you, and you're sitting there now playing the role of a therapist. No, it's gonna take some time. So just be patient with these people as they're going through it. It's all at all ages too,
Yeah, absolutely.
And for you, you must have noticed that the switch from when you started to realize these things, how much more you were able to kind of talk with these people and get them to the point where they open up, making you a more successful coach or person out there.
Yeah. I mean, that's what connection is, right? Like, everyone loves the ability to look at someone else and say, you too? You deal with that as well? No way. I thought I was the only one. So I think that's why I love your platform. What you guys are doing here is it's an opportunity for somebody to hear other people's stories and their journey. And it's an opportunity for them to reflect inward and say, them too? No way. I thought I was the only one that was going through this. And that's the beauty of what you all are doing, is sharing that.
It is so easy to trap ourselves in the thought that we are alone.
Yeah.
It really is. And it's just not the case in this world, luckily. Luckily, it's not the case. Sadly, we still have some issues making it not feel like the case. But either way, I mean, so when you're coaching, what age were you generally coaching after you got back into swim coaching?
So I'd say for swimming, I had as young as 2-year-olds that I was literally like teaching to blow bubbles, getting comfortable, putting their face under, all the way up to, in the age group realm, I had, 18-year-olds high school level. And then I kind of jumped and I had some adults in there, 40s, 50s. And even on the further end of the spectrum, I had 80-year-olds that I was teaching the same thing for the 2-year-olds. Like, how do we blow bubbles and put our face in? And that was, to me, that was the coolest thing with that, was I was able to go from working with essentially a 2-year-old to working with an 80-year-old like that. Like they would be back-to-back lessons. And obviously my coaching style has to change for both, but it was a fun challenge.
I'd be interested to see what it would be like if you coach the 80-year-olds exactly the same as the 2-year-olds. But really, this change. Can you give me a little more about like what maybe between a 5-year-old versus a 17-year-old? How are you going to go into the practice?
It's all about just finding that middle ground, that relatability. How can you connect with them? You're going to connect with a 5-year-old way different than you are someone in high school. One, based on maturity level. Like if I'm working with 5 to 8-year-olds, I'm gonna be super silly and goofy and just kind of make a fool of myself and just show them that like what we're doing is fun and that it should be treated as such. And high schoolers don't really respond to that quite the same, but still, it's still some level of like, hey, let's be goofy, let's have fun, while still like putting in work and physically working hard.
Yeah, it's like reading the room.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so Cory, you have been absolutely unbelievable today. I'm gonna ask for one last piece of advice for anyone who is, making a big switch in their life or leaving that craft that they so identified themselves with. What is the first thing they can do?
First thing they can do, and as they're making that shift, is not stress about being good right away, but finding a way to bring some intention in behind their actions. From an athletic standpoint, that was one thing that I was missing the mark on at first. But then once I started putting intent behind everything that I do in a day, that's when I started to feel way more just fulfilled and being present. And yeah, that's really it. Just set benchmark goals and know that it doesn't have to be done that day, but take action each day towards where you want to go.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all the advice. I'm going to leave the floor to you to put any information about any of the podcasts, any work that you're doing right now. As much as you have the floor for as long as you need.
Awesome. Well, first and foremost, thank you all. I appreciate your time and having me on here. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's not often that interviews kind of skew towards this area and this light of my journey. So it's fun to share kind of all areas of me. And that's really what it is. As far as things I got going on, like I mentioned, I'm a personal performance coach. I primarily now work with former athletes that are going through some sort of transition, whether it's that transition right out of school or later on in their life, and they're just feeling like kind of stuck. They're ready to level up with things. I run a group coaching program called More Than Movement that is actually open for enrollment right now through the 26th of October. I don't know when this is going to air, but that's when the doors close on this next round of enrollment of former athletes. And really in that program, we focus on bringing structure, bringing intention back into their life and providing them with a community and network that supports them rather than making them feel like they have to go through this figuring out journey by themselves. And that's ultimately the goal.
Couldn't have said it better myself. With that we're also going to sign off here from Sharing Stories, hopefully turning your mental health into mental wealth. Thank you all for listening, and please continue to do so. Have a good one.
Woo!